Hello, fellow YouTubers. This is an engine and high pressure pump that I have been restoring from an old Lamborghini oil burner. That's because I'm planning to rebuild this from the ground for using with waste oil products. Used engine oil and also used cooking oil and such. So, but in my restoring process, I have been giving this pump some new O-rings, these small rubber rings, and a new seal over here, and polishing it up and clean it totally, a new filter and everything. But that's a totally different story that I'll be telling some more about when getting further into that project. But in this very moment, I have been trying to start the engine up after I've been putting new bearings in it, and then I found that it wouldn't start properly unless I give it a little and then it starts. So engine no problem, but that tells me that might be a problem with this one. This is a starting capacitor, which is generating a magnetic field for starting an engine like this with normal socket power. Such engine uses, I don't know what that's called in English. It uses, the hot wire in a wall socket, the one that you would get shocked by. That one is the power for this, and it needs more than one of them. As you might know, there's only one of those in a normal wall outlet, unless you have a look at a big one like this one driving my air compressor over here. That has 3 of them. So, but this small engine here is the type that has to be plugged into such socket like that, and that's why we have a starting capacitor for it. But that's enough for starting capacitor, and we have to figure out why it doesn't start properly. And I'm guessing that this starting capacitor, as earlier mentioned, is the problem. So we are going to make a test on it and figure out if that actually is the problem, or maybe there's a wiring problem or something. But that's very unlikely, as I have been testing the wires while I put together the engine again. So I think definitely this is the problem. Let's start by having a look at the value of it. It's supposed to have a value of 4 nanoFarads, and that's a 5% tolerance. That means that it's plus minus 5%, so it can be 5% less than 4 or 5% higher than the 4. It's this range that it's supposed to be dealing with, and we can see it is rated at a minimum of 400 volts, so that's way over the wall socket. Here in Denmark we have 230 volts in the sockets, so that's still sufficient. So it's made in Italy. I can see that tells me that it's bullshit, so already there it's in my opinion going to be thrown out. But let's test it just to show you guys how to test start up capacitor like this one. There is, just to give some more info about starting capacitors and motor engine capacitors in general. This, as you might figure, this big motherfucker here is what you call an electrolytic capacitor. It is an AC model because it's not polarized. You can see here it's not plus and minus. It's used for alternating power, and that is also shown by, you can see this little sign in here with this wave-alike thing. That means it is for AC power and not battery power. So You can see that it's for 50 hertz. That's also what we got in the wall sockets in Denmark. So everything fine, but still not going. So let's test this bullshit. And I forgot to mention one thing. There is also another type of capacitors found in small equipment with electric engines. For example, you can have a jigsaw or anything driven by electricity, or maybe a vacuum cleaner or something, and you might find another type of capacitor in there, not looking like this one. Oftenly, or let's say always, way smaller, and usually it is a little round one, which is normally it's what you call that, a poly capacitor. And you will also find, I have actually one laying here from last time I changed things up in the window here, and they also look like this. This is from an old vacuum cleaner that stopped working. So this is not a starting capacitor. So you may also notice it's not as big. That's one thing, but it is visually big. But it is also totally different format. You will, as I have seen, never find this type of capacitor having a big box like this. This is what you call a run capacitor. That's used for a different purpose than this one. This is a starting capacitor used for starting the engine, and this one is used for running an engine. It is used often in, as mentioned, vacuum cleaners and stuff. You may not confuse this, because you cannot use this one as a replacement for this one. So, because this is electrolytic, you can compare that a little bit, not totally, but you can compare it a little bit to a battery. It will store some energy that it can release, like that's the primary purpose of all capacitors, but this is more battery-like than this one is. So you cannot substitute this one with this one, and vice not possible either. So that was just a little more info about capacitors in engines. So let's have a look. Oh yeah, one more thing, just to point out what not to do if some of you out there is not that into electronics that I am. You see, as I told earlier in the video, this starting capacitor is a type called an AC, as this states here. It's used for alternating current. This is wall socket power. You will also find electrolytic capacitors looking like this, and this one you can see is polarized. Here it says that this is minus, and obviously the other one is then plus. That's that's quite logically so. But you can see here this says 400 volts and 470 nanofarads, and it is polarized. Blah 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 blah. When it is polarized, it is used for DC direct current, and that's not the same as this alternating current. So you may not replace this one, and I cannot say this enough. Do not try to replace a starting capacitor like this with a polarized one like this one. You will find out what happens if you do it, but I will not suggest trying that, because it will for sure blow up in your face. So don't do that. Yeah, but enough about that. Let's get into testing this shit. And to do so, I have specialized what we call an LCR meter over here. It's a special tool used for testing capacitors especially, but also testing windings in transformers, engines, and you name it. So yeah, it can also test resistance, so that's why it's called LCR. So, but yeah, enough about that shit. I will just be removing this and then I will get back to you and we start the actual testing. See you.